TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. And this time, I hopefully don't have a giant echo of God.
Yeah, you guys were really
Sorry
upset about that. Oh, did we add the new donation level on the Patreon?
We did.
So we're adding a level, what, at $20?
Yes.
$20 a month. So. I'll send you a cross stitch. So far, I don't have anything creative, but somebody did order. Do you remember me talking about the LBG trans mafia thing that I wanted to make? A couple of people were like, "Oh, haha, don't forget about that." I was like, "Yes," but I'm like up to my neck in Christmas orders.
Yeah.
And somebody just did a custom order in my Etsy shop that just said that LGBT thing you said on the podcast. So
nice.
Now
there
I'm
we go.
making
Now
one.
it's a thing.
So anyway, at I think $20 a month, I'll send you. Just reach out. I'll send you something you want.
Do it.
Hopefully in January because I'm so behind.
All right. I know there are a lot of, as we're recording this on Friday afternoon, there's a ton of Donald Trump, Mike Flynn stuff coming out. So by the time you hear this, that'll be old news and something else will come up and I don't know what's going on. So,
but that's been occupying our mornings.
Right.
Yeah, it's what, 1 o'clock today?
Something like that.
Another early record.
It is. So I wanted to talk about what Donald Trump did last night because that's not going away. Because last night he lit up the White House Christmas tree and made a little speech in front of it. And somehow, in the easiest, most ceremonial thing you can do as president, he managed to screw up,
Honestly,
get wrong
I didn't
a
even
bunch
hear
of
about
things. Yeah, I know, because in normal years, this would be, this is a pleasant little story to put at the end of a newscast.
Right.
Totally buried. But here's the setup. He's lighting up the Christmas tree, makes a short little speech. Melania's in the background.
I know he said something about, I've been looking forward to this or something like that.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk. There were 3 things he did that were just, what are you doing? You're just wrong. Okay, first one is he just assumed everybody accepts the Jesus story. And this is what he said.
Oh.
Whatever our beliefs, we know that the birth of Jesus Christ and the story of this incredible life forever changed the course of human history.
Well, no, not exactly.
We all have different beliefs. We're all united in our acceptance of Jesus Christ, the Lord and Savior.
That's really fucked up because it does make a lot of assumptions, but I feel like just rewording it would really change everything a lot.
Had you just said Christians believe.
Or just like the story of Jesus is something that's very impactful, like I would find no fault with, but like no matter
whatever
what you
our
believe,
beliefs,
you definitely believe this thing.
Got that, Jews? Yeah, that's nice. Here's the next thing, and this is what you were referring to. He acted like he was bringing Merry Christmas back to the country by doing this, saying specifically now as the President of the United States, it's my tremendous honor to finally wish America and the world a very Merry Christmas.
See, I think that's maybe one of the best examples that we have that we talk about a lot of. Frequently Trump, but often other leaders, when they have this authoritarian vibe about them, they just say something that makes it true. So the fact that Donald Trump is like, no one said Merry Christmas for 50 years, like, and everyone's like, yeah, I don't think that's even remotely
Not
true.
even close to true.
Yeah.
Every single year, Barack Obama has done the exact same thing and said the words Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
And sent out cards saying Merry Christmas and said it in front of the Christmas tree and made a video with his family saying it. Like, it happens all the time.
You know what's funny? I'm remembering back in my infant days with Friendly Atheists when I was blogging still, I wrote a thing because the Obamas sent out a Christmas card. God, this is probably Christmas 2012, I'd say. And it was like of the dog Bo. Like it was a really lovely like portrait picture of Bo like in the front lawn of the White House. The White House in the background is snowy. It's a really lovely picture, and that was kind of the card. And it said Merry Christmas or Happy or whatever it said. And like, I remember having to write a blog about like, cool, conservatives are mad because there's like this card isn't religious enough or not Christmassy enough. Like
it said Happy Holidays along with Merry Christmas, therefore it must be bad.
I'm curious. I want to go back and look at, but I think it was just the fact that it was Bo on the cover that like made them mad, I guess.
Yeah. They'll find a reason to hate.
But like just spinning it to the future of like, oh, remember when that's what we used to have a blog about of like, oh, some Christian radio host is mad about Bo being on the Christmas card.
Remember when people got mad because Obama wore a tan suit? That's what we used to talk about.
The days.
Yeah. But here's the thing. The last thing Trump did at last night's ceremony that was even worse than the other ones, and this one you can't just rewrite. Like, he said this. Here's what he said about the story of Jesus.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
The Christmas story begins 2,000 years ago with a mother, a father, their baby son, blah, 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 blah. Who's the father in that version of the story? He makes it sound like Joseph is the father. That's not what Christianity says. He's called the Son of God for a reason. She's called the Virgin Mary for a reason.
That is, a pretty big thing to fuck up, Trump, buddy.
It's not a mother, father, and baby son. It's mother, a random guy who didn't do anything in this story, Jesus, and God's not in the picture, and not even the three wise men have anything to do with this. Like, how did you screw that one up? Who wrote this one for you?
Giving him I don't want to do this, but like, did he mean Mary, God, and no?
I'm sure he doesn't
Joseph.
care. I'm sure someone handed him the thing to read, and he just
maybe
did
he
it.
just like looked at a nativity scene. And was like, "Yep, named him."
But the funny thing is, if you go back to when he was when he was campaigning,
the greatest llama you've ever seen.
Reporters asked him, because he was talking about his Bible credentials, and they're like, "Oh, so are you an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?"
He's like, "The what?"
Which is a dumb question to begin with. But the correct answer would have been, oh, he's a Christian trying to appeal to the evangelical base. Then, of course, he loves the New Testament. That's all the Jesus stuff. What did he say? Probably equal.
Oh, buddy.
That's not even a good wavering answer.
Oh, honey, no.
Like, oh, my God. So anyway, that was the tree lighting. Easiest thing in the world. Screwed it up many times over.
Can I tell you a really quick sidebar from my younger days? When I was in high school, a friend of mine brought me to her midnight mass. And I actually really enjoyed it. I'd never been before. And the pastor did a whole thing about the faith that Joseph would have had to have to like believe that Mary was really like impregnated by God and had been cheating on her. And it was just all about like, oh, the stigma he must have faced in this town if everybody thought that she was a virgin, like yada, yada, yada. And I remember I was talking to my friends about it, and I was like 15 or 16 at the time, and I was like, I didn't know how much shit Joseph went through. And they made fun of me for like 10 years for that, because it was just like this really like beautifully naive thing of like, I never thought about it that way. But anyway, that was my midnight mass experience.
Trump has never put that much thought into religion.
Right?
I don't know.
Anyway.
There is another story that involves Roy Moore, of course, because he's going to win. Unless Alabama gets its shit together, which...
What do you think?
He's going to win. And then they're going to seat him, and they're not going to get rid of him. But I'm sure Al Franken's going to resign by the end of the year. But Roy Moore will be a senator. But here's the thing. The American Family Association, Christian right group...
You just bummed me out so bad.
There's plenty more where that comes from in this podcast. The AFA put out this press release, because one of the things that came out this week is that Congress has this... the House, specifically, has this special taxpayer-funded fund that they use to pay out sexual harassment settlements.
Sure,
and they do this for both sides of the aisle, apparently. John Conyers, a Democrat, is one of the people implicated in this, but there are Republicans too. So the AFA, calling on their sense of decency, issued a press
American
release.
Family Association, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They put out this press release with pictures of Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, and they said, we're calling on the Senate Majority Leader and House Speaker Ryan, release the names of anyone who had a settlement paid out from this fund, quit protecting congressmen who sexually harass, which...
Oh, okay.
That
Wait.
sounds like a
I super
good
went on a roller
idea.
coaster with that. I thought you
Yeah.
meant release the names of the accusers.
No. Release the names of the congressmen who had to pay out settlements for this, because why don't we know about this?
Hey,
that's a good idea.
Can I just live in this moment where I agree with the AFA?
I know.
I just want to live here for a minute. Just don't take it away.
I won't take it away.
Okay.
So good on them. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I agree. I want them to release the names of which congressmen had to pay out settlements because I'm
Absolutely.
very curious who was accused
I feel like
of
that's
this
going to
stuff.
affect how I vote.
Right? Here's what AFA's political arm, because they do have one, even though it's a nonprofit, many do.
Mm-hmm.
They said on Facebook earlier this month, AFA Action believes Justice Roy Moore to be a truthful man and a solid Christian. Based on his statement of denial, we're proud to stand by our endorsement of Judge Roy Moore.
Oh, cool.
So they want to kick out all the congressmen who sexually harass. They literally said they want to kick out like the pervs in the.
They said pervs.
Maybe that's my.
Did you put a little Hemet spin on that?
Maybe. But they want to kick out those people. They want to get rid of the, quote, congressional sex offenders and, quote, quit protecting perverts in Congress.
Okay.
But hey, Roy Moore, you still have our vote.
Wow, guys. I just don't. I really, really, really don't get it. I really don't understand how they can. I mean, I know hypocrisy and kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth is pretty common in politics and in religion, frankly. But how people can be willing to be like, yes, these women who accused X, Y, and Z are telling the truth, and those people deserve they deserve the consequence of their action, and it needs to set a precedent that if you abuse your power by abusing women or children or whomever, then there will be consequences for your action, and you will not retain that power. Yes, but. How do they then say, like, anybody who accused Donald Trump is a liar? Anybody accused Roy Moore is
Roy Moore, yeah.
Because I don't think
they
even
don't investigate. They just dismiss offhand. And if you say you didn't do it, then they believe you if you are.
So you're saying because Al
their
Franken
way.
said, I did it and I'm sorry.
Because he said he did it and because he's a Democrat. If he said I did it, but, I am putting my faith in God to make me better, or something like that Republicans do all the time, they would have been like, well, as long as you're going to... Yeah, they want Roy Moore in because he's going to elect pro-life, anti-choice.
And it's so funny.
Justices, judges, up and down the line, so they don't care. They don't care about the pedophilia. They don't care about child molestation. Even if Moore came out and said, yeah, I did touch her when she was 14 years old... They still would say, well, he's forgiven now by God.
He was the creepy guy at the mall. And I feel like anybody around my age who was like born in the 80s or so.
That went to malls.
You know the creepy guy at the mall and you fucking avoided him. We used to hang in the Caribou Coffee to avoid the creepy guy at the mall. Nice. Everyone knows who that was.
Yeah.
It's just, but okay, here's my question. Here's my sort of hypothetical. Yeah. If it weren't for the serious allegations against Moore in regard to the molestation and all that, would this still be a much talked about runoff? Because even all that aside, he got kicked off of the Supreme Court of Alabama twice. Other things, I think.
He was kicked off the Supreme Court twice, but he would be running away with this if it weren't for the allegations.
But do you think it would
and
be
even
a
now he's
conversation
only slightly winning?
Worth having?
No, because the voters.
Is this more common than I know?
It's Alabama Christians. I mean, there's a majority. They can choose whoever they want to win because they vote and they care, and there's a lot of them. They did not care about Roy Moore getting kicked off for him putting the Constitution underneath the Bible.
He couldn't have been the only Christian right-wing male running for that particular...
Luther Strange is the guy who was already in the seat, who's doing everything Trump wants, and that wasn't good enough for them. They wanted, like, a guy even more right-wing, and Roy Moore gives them that. I thought he was going to run for governor, but, like, this is maybe a better opportunity for national profile.
Sure.
So whatever. I mean, this would be a runaway if it weren't for these allegations.
Yeah.
And even with the allegations, I still think he's going to come away with it pretty comfortably.
Come on, Alabama.
Unless something else happens. But again, Roy Moore's purposely not debating Doug Jones because why? What's he going to gain? What's Roy Moore going to gain from a debate?
Yeah.
The people who are Christians in Alabama don't care about molestation because it's a Republican who's running.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a Democrat, they would be crying foul about it. But no, it's a Republican who's a godly guy who allegedly touched all these girls and hit on them, so they don't care.
Yeah.
That's the family of moral decency. They don't care.
I've been reading a lot of people like from the perspective of like, you know, you and I sit here like, how can a good, you know, God-fearing, Bible-thumping Alabamian,
Sure.
got it, vote for somebody who clearly has at least questionable morals. And kind of what I've been seeing time and time again is they're sort of raised on this idea that Democrats are like ungodly by nature, that they're bad, like period. Democrats are bad people. And so to be faced with this like weird moral quandary of, well, I know all Democrats are bad, but this Republican is also bad. So like
they don't think he's bad. They think he's being persecuted.
But there are people who think that he's maybe not the best guy, but they're being faced. Excuse me. With
well, the dilemma is, Doug Jones is probably not going to vote against abortion rights.
Yeah.
And that's what they're facing.
Right.
It's the potential pedophile versus a guy who's going to kill all the babies.
Right.
That's their decision, and that's how they rationalize in their heads. This is why we're going to vote for Roy Moore, even if he did do it. If he did do it, we're talking a handful of victims versus all these babies in their heads. It's a stupid rationalization, but that's, I think, how they're justifying it to themselves, and that's why he's going to win the race.
This is awful.
Mm-hmm.
This fucking year.
And again, in another year, you would say, well, it's Alabama, but it's like when the Senate's as close as it is, and this such a devastating story breaks, it's like, even in Alabama, you would think they would get this,
right.
But they won't.
I think that's the thing that I keep seeing.
If I'm wrong, by the way, believe me, I'd be so happy to be wrong about
a really
this.
good bottle of wine.
Yeah. It'll be $5. I'd love to be wrong. I'm not wrong.
I don't know, and I think the last 12 months or so have really been this like wake up call. Definitely for me personally, but I'm sure for a lot of people that I keep waiting for the other side to prove me wrong, if that makes sense.
About
everything. About
that you
Trump.
really are a family, about a party, I should say, of morals and family values.
I just that's why I thought like Trump had no chance because God, no, like this man has been twice divorced, third marriage. He has kids by 3 different women. He famously cheated on his first and second
his
wife.
Religious piety, whatever. He fakes it.
And I just keep looking to be proved wrong. So, like, I feel like we keep...
No, and as long as he keeps appointing anti-abortion judges, which he's stacking the courts right now with them with Republican help.
And they're fucking thrilled about it.
But, like, they're going to keep supporting him. Doesn't matter what he does. That's why with all the Mike Flynn stuff happening right now and all the Mueller investigation and stuff... It won't matter because even if you said, here's the P tape and here's everything Trump did to collude with Russia, they're going to say, yeah, but he's given us anti-abortion judges, so who cares?
Like, I just can't imagine setting up a greater straw man than Roy Moore is. You know what I mean? Like, he's
a test case for how
he
moral
feels like
they really are.
Liberal straw man of like, imagine somebody who's running for the Senate, but he was kicked off the Supreme Court twice because he's like won't obey the law, which feels important for a senator.
For a Supreme Court justice, who doesn't care about the law.
He has been accused by many people of being a pedophile. He's a fucking
He said
creeper.
Gay people are horrible.
He's a homophobe.
This week we learned he co-authored a textbook with somebody who said women shouldn't even be allowed to run for public office.
I did hear that. I heard
Moore
that
didn't
too.
say that, but he was part of that curriculum.
But like, unless he has like a KKK hood in his closet somewhere,
they wouldn't care.
But
what would it take?
That's what I'm saying.
What would
it
take for evangelicals to say I'm not voting for Roy Moore? I don't know the answer to that.
Like outright lynched somebody? Like
no,
honestly,
I don't think they would care. I don't know what the answer is. It's a fair question. What would it take for evangelicals to say I'm not white evangelicals? I should say because black evangelicals they're not voting. Yeah, you're awesome. What would it take for them to say I'm not voting for Roy Moore?
Right.
I don't think him saying here's my KKK lifetime membership would do it. I don't think there is anything he could do other than like, hey, this baby, here's like let me crack it over my knee. And even then they'd say, well, it's just one baby. As long as you're going to not appoint anti-choice, you're saving all the fetuses.
I guess when you assign this pro-life thing to more important than anything else, because you have, like, I don't know, man. It's too much for me to deal with, right? Because I feel like I've seen a lot of people on the right be kind of gleeful about like the Al Franken thing, and like liberal people going down and like, oh, like they seem really gleeful about like, oh, it's one of liberals' own. But I feel like most, and certainly not all, but many, I'll say, liberals are willing to say like, Franken stepped down, whomever, like, get the fuck out of the way. You did a bad thing, and we're not going to put up with it. Whereas on the other side, what do they have to do to lose the vote?
Nothing. Just say you're Christian, and then, I mean, Roy Moore has done it through his actions, too, in terms of voting the way, or acting the way they want him to act. So, I don't know. I don't think there's anything. I think he's going to run away with it, and I think even if Democrats in Alabama all get out to vote, like, in numbers we're not used to seeing, I still don't know that it's going to be enough, because it's turned from oh, wow, this looks pretty bad, to now they're persecuting him and they're assuming he's guilty even though he hasn't gone in front of a court of law or whatever.
Sure.
They'll find a way to justify it.
Well, and I think it's also, when's the...
it's next week. I believe the 12th is the vote.
I was just trying to look it up.
Yeah, so not this coming Tuesday, but the following.
So like the Tuesday after this.
Uh-huh.
God, I don't know, man. It's just... It feels also disheartening.
Yeah. And by the way, I should mention, Doug Jones, also Christian.
Yeah.
They don't care. He's not really Christian. He's not Alabama Christian.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting when with like these accusations, all of a sudden people are like, whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? Which like...
But we're not asking, should Roy Moore go to jail for these allegations?
And
the
we're
question
not in
is,
a court of fucking law. Like,
right. We're saying, should you vote for him on the basis of what these people are saying? And it's like, well, if you kind of believe that at least some of them are being pretty honest about what they're saying, and it seems pretty weird. I mean, if anything, that James O'Keefe botched luring of the Washington Post.
Oh, yeah, that was...
What did that show? That showed that the Washington Post actually does due diligence about what they publish. If anything, you should say, okay, well, if a few people are right about this, any of them being right would be creepy enough to say, like, ew, this guy should not be in a position of more power than he already is. And nothing.
Did you see there was an interesting, what was that? What's that group called? Veritas? Project Veritas? Is that what it's
that's
called?
O'Keefe's group.
So it's okay. It's they're trying to, it's like a gotcha whole thing. Like trying to...
They'll lie in order to prove whatever they want to prove and then edit, manipulate things. Basically, it's a whole group, conservative group dedicated to lying to prove that they're right about things, which you would think is self-defeating, but again...
Well, they're trying to catch people. So if you haven't been paying attention, what happened was in the midst of the Roy Moore thing, in the last couple of weeks, a woman went to, I believe, the Washington Post.
The woman who broke the Roy Moore touching a 14-year-old story.
And said... Not only did she have a relationship with Roy Moore as a teenager, but they had sex, and she got pregnant, and he made her have an abortion. And so they're investigating her.
Hoping the Post would publish that story.
And this is complete
so that they could say, hey, look, the Post publishes anything.
And as the Post kept kind of doing its job, which is investigating, they found out that her story kind of had holes and didn't seem to stack up. Then they saw her going into like a meeting with this Project Veritas, and then they broke that story of these motherfuckers are trying to sabotage us, which is honestly, I think the best thing that could have happened is them saying, no, like we are doing our fucking work over here. Like you don't see our work until like we have our ducks in a row. Yeah. And I think that's great for journal. And I think
basically O'Keefe proved that the Washington Post was right about the the Roy Moore story to begin with.
They did something similar that they got on camera in a bar with one of the editors of the Washington Post of like this guy's video like filming him, and he's saying, so are you gonna get the president? How are we gonna get the president with Russia? And he was like trying to goad him into saying like we're going after Trump, and the guy kept saying like, if it's there, we're gonna find it. It might not be there. It was like hedging his bets so well, and they promoted it as this like they say it might not even be anything.
Yeah, this is the same group that said Planned Parenthood sells fetal body parts, by getting Planned Parenthood employees under like secret hidden camera to say, well, yeah, if there is an abortion, like we pay for shipping or whatever, groups pay for shipping for us to send them the parts. Otherwise, they would go in like a dumpster, more or less. So Planned Parenthood did something awesome for research, which is to say, instead of discarding these parts, we'll use them for research. All we need is you to pay for shipping, and we'll send the labs these parts. And they took that as Planned Parenthood makes money off of abortions, whatever lie they wanted to sell. But again, they're Christian conservatives, more or less, that say we're going to lie about everything in order to prove we're right.
Right.
Which
is awful.
Should be dismissive, but again, they're funded by Robert Mercer, who's like funding so much of the conservative world, Milo, whatever.
Well, and just one more thought. A year ago, I sat here and I said, if one positive thing comes out of the Trump presidency, it's that I hope a lot of women, people of color, LGBTQ people run for office and win seats. And I think we've started seeing that happen. Now, in 2017, I think the greatest outcome of everything that's going on is that we reinvigorate how important journalism is. Yeah. I think people have been saying journalism is dying, and sure, print journalism maybe isn't what it used to, but I think the last year, and specifically the last 3 months or so, I think we've seen the importance of a diligent journalistic standard that is kept and pursued, and that's how we keep people honest, and that's why the First Amendment is important, and that's why, like, when Trump starts to like joke about shutting things down or talk shit about CNN International on Twitter and bolster Fox News, that's why this is a fucking problem, because that's what happens when you have like a totalitarian state of he says what's right and what's wrong, and that's not how the fucking world works, and that's not how the United States works. And so I hope there's a new generation of people who are going to like dive headfirst into journalism and keep us honest.
Hey, Matt Lauer's fired. I read somewhere like, hey, take his $25 million salary and buy 800 reporters. And NBC would be so much better off by doing that.
We're a little more freeform today than normal, but
I got way more stories.
Oh God. Yeah. So the Matt Lauer thing broke yesterday.
2 days ago?
2 days ago?
Maybe.
I don't know. I've been sick all week. It's all run together. And I don't have a huge opinion on what's his name?
Matt Lauer.
Matt Lauer. I have Roy Moore in my head still. I don't have an opinion. I don't have a strong opinion on Matt Lauer, but he's definitely like America's like nice uncle, it seems like he's been on whatever his morning shows forever. Is there anybody who would shock you if they went down for harassment? Because I've been thinking about this a lot, or not even shock you. I know
shock is the wrong word. Very little shocks me now.
Yeah, I guess like devastate you.
I mean, yes, and I don't even know if I need to go down the list, but it's just like, yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of people I'd be like, really, that person? Yeah. It happens every time. I thought Louis C.K. was awesome, too, even though, but again, it goes from reading rumors to, oh, shit, he's admitting it, and there's the allegations against him. I mean, that's all like, oh, well, that sucks, because I liked it. It's more disappointment than shocking.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I like Charlie Rose. It's like, oh, shit, he's creepy.
I will say, I always got creepy vibes from Charlie Rose. I will absolutely say that right now. I know hindsight is 20/20, but like, I didn't really watch him very much until I was an adult, and I was like, there's something I don't like about it. He gave me the heebie-jeebies.
I mean, so it
honestly, for me, I think of it.
You know what is interesting? Roy Moore did not shock me one bit.
Of course it didn't.
Because when you're that overtly like, I'm such a better Christian than all of you, it's like you're hiding something. Yeah.
It's the family values people. Anyway, for me, I think if Jon Stewart went down for that would honestly like kind of rattle me a little bit.
That would be disappointing.
But or like Obama.
Yeah.
That would
hurt.
True.
That would hurt. I want to move to a story that is also devastating.
Who would devastate you?
I know. This is devastating. So there's an atheist activist by the name of Scott Smith.
Oh, fuck.
I should say. He was a military veteran. He was a pretty well-known activist in the atheist world. I will say I personally did not know the guy. I don't think I met him ever. But he worked for a group, volunteered with a group called Recovering from Religion, which for the most part does amazing work. He actually did their podcast, and I think he worked on advocating for mental health awareness, which, again, sounds good. Everyone I know who knew him, you would think he's great. Like, he sounds like a good guy. And then it turns out, No. I guess the story is his wife was planning to file for divorce, and he shot her and then shot himself. Both are dead. Cops called it his suspected murder-suicide. He had 3 girls. They have no parents now, which is awful.
I thought he had killed the girls, too.
No,
it was just his wife?
Him and his wife, yeah. So the girls are left without parents. He left a Facebook message that said just goodbye before this all happened. One of the guys we've interviewed on this podcast and who I have talked to a few times is Anthony Magnabosco. He does this thing called street epistemology where he asks people just general questions. How do you think about things? Trying to get them to rethink how they critically think. Anthony was a friend of Scott's, and I guess that morning they were going to go out for lunch or something like that. He gets a call from Scott saying that I can't meet you today. And Anthony at some point saw the message goodbye on Facebook. So he goes over to Scott's house, just sees police cars. It's a horrible story. It's a devastating story. Again, I don't know him. I went to go look him up on Facebook after all this kind of broke. And all I saw was like, you have a friend request waiting that I never responded to because I usually don't. So I'm just like, oh, I didn't know the guy. We had a lot of mutual friends, so I know a lot of people who knew him. But I think that's what surprised me about all this, which is that this is a guy who I think, as far as I know, no one suspected anything weird. I don't think anyone knew he was a gun owner, much less someone capable of using it for something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was PTSD. I don't know if it was mental health issue. I don't know if it was domestic abuse, though it appears that that's maybe part of the problem here. I don't know enough about why. I don't know the motive, but I think the thing that surprised me is it's like, wow, this is someone from everyone I've talked to.
This is part of our community. Yeah,
this is a guy who's part of our community, and he did this horrible thing. Unlike other, like that, who was it? The horrible guy who shot up a church that they linked to
Dylan
being
Roof?
an atheist.
No.
The recent guy who they said he was an atheist or he liked atheist pages. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but he wasn't one of us.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what his atheist beliefs were.
And you don't
this guy was.
Right.
And this guy did this horrible thing. And it's...
And you don't want to like no true Scotsman that guy. Like,
no.
But this is closer to home.
This is closer to home. And
in our circle.
Yeah. Now, there is a GoFundMe page, legit. Anthony Magnabosco has confirmed it with the wife, Jennifer, her family. They said, yes, this was started by Jennifer's brother, I think. And it's for the girls.
Do you have a site?
So I will post the link to that. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there is a GoFundMe page for the girls to help them out with college
Texas?
And things like that. This was, Texas, San Antonio.
Okay.
So anyway, devastating, horrible story. And Jennifer is the woman who this happened to. Just an awful story.
Yeah, that's, man. And it's hard, too, because, I talk a lot about mental health and stuff like that. And it's really scary to see somebody who was an advocate for mental health who clearly had his own demons, forgive the expression. I don't know. Maybe that's why
I think you're going to start hearing, at least within a day or two, maybe by the time this comes out, more details, not just about the case, but from people who knew him well. I've talked to someone who has gotten in touch with a lot of the people who were closest to him, including his family, who have, so that'll be out. And if that comes out by the time this airs, I'll post a link to those things as well. Keep Jennifer in mind, keep the kids in mind, and scary shit.
It's a fucking terrible time of year for this to happen, too.
Yeah, that too.
God.
Let me move on to something that's lighthearted, not to just try to ignore that one, but because
otherwise we'll just keep digging down.
Yeah, we can. So American Atheists put up a new billboard for the holidays, and this is a group that has put up billboards in the past that said, it's a myth with a picture of the nativity. They urge people to skip church. It's okay to skip church. They urge people to come out as atheists. Well, they just put up billboards in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Dallas, Texas, and it's a picture of the nativity with the message, "Just skip church. It's all fake news."
Oh, God. Oh, brother.
Now the question, that one doesn't seem offensive. That's almost
it's
cute.
Not offensive.
It's almost
very,
cute at this point.
It's very like, we're watching the news. We know what kids say.
And I'm very curious to hear the feedback because already in at least local news reports, they're trying to drum up controversy.
Sure.
So they've gotten people who are like, how dare they do this to us? It's like, what are you talking? Everything you say in churches, everyone else is lying about stuff because this is the truth.
The one truth.
I mean, everyone has their religious beliefs or non-religious beliefs. We all think everyone else is wrong. Mm-hmm. To just say like, hey, that's not true. Yeah. That's hardly controversial at this point.
I do. A thing that amused me for when like atheist billboards were like a huge thing, maybe 4 years ago, kind of like hit its peak. I really liked when they tried to be as innocuous as possible and like would still get flack about that. And it would just be like, you can be good without God. And people were like, what? How could you?
Yeah. And now you really have to go over the line to get people worked up, it seems, which is probably why the billboards kind of died out.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do something? Here's a slightly happier story because it's not just getting totally depressed. I'm going to possibly apologize to Ken Ham right now. I know. Let me
I thought you were
back
going to
up a
apologize
bit.
to me and I was really psyched.
Never. Let me back up for a little bit. So the Creation Museum put up a post on their website, which I read diligently.
I hate it.
Which said we're going to expand. And again, when the Creation Museum and Ken Ham says they're going to expand that museum, it's like, well, it's not with new information.
Right.
So what are you doing? They're going to put up some more zip lines. No, it's like they're going to install a bathroom and reorganize the stuff and have new exhibits.
They didn't have bathrooms in biblical times.
They're going to put up new exhibits. But I was like, all right, what are these new exhibits? And one of them that he shows is an image that he's clearly, I've seen his PowerPoints before, if you ever look at his lectures. And it's like a real life version of this cartoon that he shows. And I'm going to try to describe it to you. Imagine two castles.
Give me a word picture.
Yeah. Two castles standing side by side. One is autonomous human reasoning and humanism. The other castle is, Christianity and God's word. Mm-hmm. And both of them are like firing cannons at each other at different levels of this thing. So the humanism castle has balloons sticking up at the top that say gay marriage, abortion, euthanasia, moral relativism. And of course, the Christians are firing their cannons at
the balloons,
and the castle.
What do those balloons say?
Their argument is, look at the humanism castle. It's built on a foundation of human reasoning, and we can't rely on that. We got to rely on our foundation of God's word.
I need to look at this.
I would move it, but now I'm afraid if I move my computer,
I'm gonna look at
it'll become God's voice talking to you again. But here's the thing. So if you look at that cartoon, I thought it looked pretty strange because on the Christian castle, one guy's aiming the cannon in the wrong direction. Another one's aiming the cannon straight down on his own base.
Did you post this?
I did. And none of them are really hitting the balloons. And then when you look at the mock-up of what the new exhibit's gonna look like,
tell me.
It looks just like that. I could see the cannon pointing in the other direction. I'm like, are you about to put up this thing that says, Christianity founded on God's word, but it is a self-inflicted wound because your Christian cannon's not even pointing in the right direction. So whatever, I thought it was fair to make fun of all this.
But...
And then a friend tells me, no, you're only getting half the picture because Ken Ham, when he shows this cartoon, he's saying this is the problem because, yes, the cannons are aiming at the humanist castle.
Sure.
But the Christians who are aiming their cannons in the wrong direction or hitting it on themselves, those are the Christians who are not properly relying on God's word. He's basically mocking other Christians who are not fundamentalists, taking the Bible literally, things like that. And so it's like, so he's saying that's only part one of the cartoon. Part two of the cartoon shows a castle that is full of Christian fundamentalists who believe Genesis is literally how the world was formed. And their cannons are all pointed in the right direction. And they are aiming at the atheist castle and things like that. And here's the thing. The mock-up that they showed on the website did not have part two of this cartoon. You're looking at a mock-up of the exhibit. And it shows the first part of the cartoon. There's no exhibit that shows part two where everyone's aiming the cannons in the right direction. So I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know if part 2 gets its own exhibit, but it says, I don't know. It said problem and solution in the very same picture, so I thought it was fair. But if I was wrong and I made fun of Ken Ham even though I wasn't seeing the total picture there, I apologize. That was wrong.
I mean, because the way it's... So the banner of problem/solution has, like, problem over the humanism castle
and solution over the Christian one,
castle.
even though some of the Christians are aiming the cannons in the wrong place. But apparently, if that's only half the exhibit...
And here's my other argument. So you talked about... So there's the 2 castles, and there's huge balloons over the humanism one, right?
Yeah.
So all of the cannons that are aiming toward the humanism castle are, like, shooting at the balloons that are hanging above it. Whereas
the humanists are hitting the foundation, the Bible.
Which
again, that's...
I think it's pretty apt because they're trying to, like, go after these, like, nitpicky, like, oh, we hate gay people. And we're like, you know, obviously we're not going to, like, let that go, but you're not shaking our foundation. So thanks, Ken Ham?
I know. I don't get this exhibit. I'm trying to find logical sense in the Creation Museum, which is a tough sell. I got one more story with that has to do with not the Creation Museum, but Ark Encounter. So get this. There is a guy named Dan Phelps who is a geologist in Kentucky.
Related to Fred Phelps?
No, I don't think so. He's been a fantastic watchdog of Ark Encounter.
Nice.
He's been following the stuff they do. He lives in the area. He's done a really good job of letting people know, here's what's going on with Ark Encounter. And so one of the things we've really never really known in the past year is what's Ark Encounter's attendance.
Yeah.
Ken Ham loves to
Do we
say
have numbers?
it's huge. Oh, I'm getting there.
Oh, God.
Ken Ham loves to say, like, we had a great weekend over the summer. Of course they did. That's not surprising.
That's when weekends are good.
That's when, you're a tourist attraction. Surprise, surprise. But again, when some atheists have gone there, like legitly and paid for their ticket, they're like, there's not a lot of people here. But again, they're not going on summer weekends or something. So what's the deal?
Sure.
And a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago or something, we talked on this podcast because Kentucky, Williamstown, Kentucky, the city where Ark Encounter is, they instituted a safety fee. They said for every ticket sold, you owe us 50 cents to pay for fire trucks and police cars and the like. And so even though Ark Encounter can hide their attendance numbers, the city of Williamstown and their safety fee money, that's a public record.
Right.
And so what we found out in August is that Ken Ham paid, he said, over $70,000 for the month of July in safety fee.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's like,
So
interesting. So you probably got 140,000 people that month, which... not bad. But again, it's July in the summer, so I don't know what to make of that. So Dan Phelps finally filed an open records request to get as many of these safety fee numbers, and they came in this morning as we do this podcast. Here's basically what he found. July, the big month that we were talking about, 142,000 people.
Okay.
August, 106,000. September, 83,000. October, 93,000. So... what do you make of these numbers? Here's what I'm thinking with this. By the way, all those numbers were rounded. Here's what I get from all that. July does not surprise me that they had a pretty good month. August, September, October, well under what I think everyone expects. Ken Ham actually wrote an article last week for a Kentucky paper where he said, we're doing great. We're expecting 1.4 to 2.2 million people in the second year of Ark Encounter's existence.
Okay, because I remember him saying the first year they expected around
2 million is what he started saying.
I thought it was 1.5.
Then he changed it to 1.5.
Okay, so 1.5, you'd need at least 100,000 per month.
And then, by the way, at the end of the first year, they broke 1 million, which is far lower than his early estimates. Now he's saying 1.4 to 2.2 million. If you do the math, 1.4 million is like a little over 116,000 people a month.
I'll do the math. I'll check that. Go ahead.
It's all good. July, they did that. August, September, October, way lower. I have to believe November, December, January, February, March, April are probably lower too.
Yeah.
So really, because it's school years going on,
Sure.
it's not vacation time, even with spring break. So really, you're going to tell me that like June, July, and next August or whatever, you're going to make up for all the people who aren't coming? I don't think he's going to hit that number again. I think what we learned from these numbers is that he's not hitting his own estimates.
Yeah. So, okay, I have a few questions.
Yeah.
At this point, is Ark Encounter profit or nonprofit?
It is a nonprofit.
Okay, so it's still under the nonprofit guys.
Yeah.
So
I believe so. Yes.
I guess my question...
Wait, let me think about this.
Because it did some flippy-flopping.
They did some flippy-flopping.
Because originally, if I remember correctly, while you think, I'll summarize what I remember. Originally, it was a for-profit company. And then when the city of Williamstown?
They wanted to charge it as such, and then they changed it to a nonprofit.
But then they wanted to change it to nonprofit.
I don't remember what it is anymore.
Okay.
But
well, I guess regardless, when he's throwing out these numbers, is he beholden to anything? Like, there aren't shareholders, I presume.
No, like, these are just, I'm not saying...
So these aren't, like, fraudulent?
No. These are not, I'm not saying these are fraudulent at all. I think these are legit numbers. The question is he living up to his own estimates? Because he keeps saying this many people are coming in.
Right.
It's only worthwhile to the city of Williamstown, who bent over backwards to give them all these tax breaks and incentives, if they're bringing in a certain amount of people. And these numbers show, I don't think you're bringing in all the people you think you said or you predicted you would bring in.
Right.
Which makes it harder for the city to survive, giving you all these breaks.
Because I'm just thinking, like, say, a car manufacturer. If they're projecting they're going to sell, 1.4 million cars next year, then their company will beef up to reflect what they think those numbers are. And if they don't hit that, people get laid off, all that stuff. So they're somewhat beholden to that, lest they lose a lot of money.
Sure, if people don't show up, they may have to lay off some people. But more importantly, if people don't show up, which is what I think is going to happen, because, again, this is Ark Encounter. It's not a real museum where you learn stuff every time you visit.
And it changes, it's rotating.
The zip lines are one thing, but you don't need to go to Ark Encounter for a zip line.
You know I love a zip line, damn it.
So they're hurting the city, I think. The city gave them all these incentives with the knowledge that they would bring in millions and millions of people, and it doesn't look like they're bringing them in.
So really the only people who are going to suffer are the people of Williamstown.
Bingo. Yep.
Kentucky.
Sounds like it.
Yikes.
All right.
But Emmett, they forgot to build a huge hotel, so sounds like somebody was asking for it.
Ark Encounter.
The worst.
All right. I got one story for you that I don't want to forget this, or that I don't want to ignore this week, because to me it's a big deal. It's actually, it goes back more than a year.
Is it that Corey Crawford's on the injured reserve list? Because I just got a push alert, and that's pretty upsetting. He's the goalie for the Blackhawks.
This
non-sports friends.
Haven't seen a game.
Cool.
There's a Christian apologist named Ravi Zacharias. Pretty famous Christian apologist.
Ravi Zacharias? Yep. That is a dope name.
Yes. He's been around forever. Ever long before I became an atheist, people were like, a Christian apologist were like, oh, you should check this guy out. He will convince you to believe in God. Somehow that didn't work. But okay, he's been around. He's a typical Christian apologist, goes around giving a lot of lectures as to why, secular philosophers and Richard Dawkins is wrong about stuff. Here's why God exists. Here's why the Christian God is the right God, etc. That is not new information. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Here's what's weird. Ravi Zacharias, who's been around for decades and has his ministry that is a global ministry, he writes a lot of books. He puts his bio on the back of these books, and he has it on his bio on the website for his ministry. And if you looked at his bio more than a year ago, it said a few things. For example, he called himself Dr. Zacharias, and he said he holds 3 doctorate degrees. That's impressive.
And that's a verifiable claim.
Yeah, he also said he quote, has been a visiting scholar at Cambridge University. Wow.
I bet they
he
keep
said
records.
He is a senior research fellow at Oxford University. So, he's not just some guy talking about Jesus.
He's a smart boy.
He's a smart guy with academic credentials to back up everything he's saying, so you should trust him.
Yeah.
So anyway, there is a guy named Steve Bauman, an attorney. He's an atheist. He actually goes by the moniker Friendly Banjo Atheist.
All right.
No
kind
relation.
Stepping on our toes.
No relation. It's all good. I like Steve. Steve actually looked into. Steve looked at all these claims.
Wait, Friendly Banjo Atheist?
I don't know. I don't.
We need a crossover podcast.
As tempted as I am to laugh, I realize how stupid Friendly Atheists sound sometimes. So,
if only you did a meta joke.
Anyway.
Meta-analysis.
So, guess what? Those 3 doctorates he has?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, he doesn't.
You don't fucking say.
What he does, if you look at his bio today, it says he has 10 honorary doctorates, which from Christian schools, as far as we know, where they're like, you're awesome. We'll give you a doctorate, which is one thing when it comes from Harvard, but it's another when it's from Jack's Bible College.
Like Phoenix University.
Yeah, here's your doctorate for for just agreeing with everything we say.
Yeah.
Like it might be nice for some people, but for a Christian apologist to get an honorary doctorate from a Christian school really doesn't mean that much.
Right.
And you sure as hell don't call yourself doctor. That's not what an honorary doctorate
I'm sorry,
works.
if I got an honorary doctorate, all of my letterheads are changed to Dr. Jessica Bloomke Gray for life.
And that's wrong.
Hey, Harvard, come at me. Give me a doctorate.
Right, so it's like, don't call yourself doctor.
Right.
That's no. You say, I have honorary doctorates, and then you should say what schools they're from, but that's how you properly indicate that. Mm-hmm. And to be sure, if he doesn't have a PhD, that's fine. You could still talk about Jesus, but don't lie about it.
Right.
The thing about being a visiting scholar at Cambridge, here's what his bio says today, because Steve Bauman caught them on this, called up Cambridge. They're like, we don't know who the hell this guy is. Here's what Zacharias' bio says now. Zacharias has been a visiting scholar at Ridley Hall, Cambridge, in parentheses, then affiliated with Cambridge University, now more recently allied with Cambridge and affiliated with Durham University. That is literally what his bio says now.
Wow, there has to be a more succinct way to say
all of that is to say he has nothing to do with the prestigious Cambridge University, and affiliated and allied do not mean they are part of the university.
What does it mean, though?
It just means like they like the work we do. I don't know what it means, but it doesn't mean like this is a part of the university. For example, there is the Humanist Hub at Harvard. Greg Epstein runs this group out of Harvard. They're not part of Harvard. That's just a group that does work. And Greg is a part of kind of the divinity school.
Gotcha.
But it's not like a Harvard thing. Okay. But again, you don't lie about that sort of thing, and they don't lie about it. But Ravi Zacharias is like, I was part of Cambridge. No. You're part of like a group that kind of had a loose affiliation with Cambridge. So it's not the same thing. What about being a senior research fellow at Oxford? That's just gone from his bio.
Oh.
So anyway, all of this happened more than a year ago.
Is he British, at least?
Ravi Zacharias? I don't believe he is. I don't think he has any British anything. I think born in India, but lives in the U.S.
Oh, he lives in the U.S.?
I think so. But anyway, Bauman wrote another article earlier this year saying, recapping kind of all these things. And he also added a bunch of other points. Zacharias once claimed he was the chairman of the Department of Evangelism and Contemporary Thought at Alliance Theological Seminary, which sounds prestigious.
How many of those things are real?
That department never existed.
Neat.
Bauman actually had talked to a private investigator and two professors who were at that school when this all happened, and they're like, that wasn't a department. He was the chair of something else.
What was the last part? Modern thought? Contemporary thought?
Contemporary thought at Alliance Theological Seminary.
Oh my God.
Basically, it's a guy embellishing his resume to the point where anyone who looks at it, who knows the school, is like, that's not a thing at our school. He basically, and this is what Steve wrote in his post, Ravi simply invented the department and made himself its chair, and thereby scored for himself a prestigious academic title that he never held.
That is God, the fucking gall of someone.
All these lies we knew last year, and now he found even more. And Warren Throckmorton, who is a Christian who is a watchdog of a lot of this stuff, is like, why do Christians still take Ravi Zacharias seriously? Because it's like a Roy Moore thing.
Yeah.
When you build your entire career on, I hold the truth and I speak about the truth, and you should trust me, here are objective facts that you are lying about, and we know that. Why should people still listen to you? Here's what Warren wrote.
I'm shocked I never heard
When a
this
Christian
guy.
celebrity looks into the camera and tells a falsehood, we cannot trust what is said afterward. Remember David Barton, the Christian pseudo-historian who spreads a lot of lies about how we're a Christian?
Dude.
Yeah, revisionist history. Said the same thing. I'm Dr. David Barton. No, he has honorary doctorates from Christian schools. They don't count. That's not the same thing. And by the way, Ravi Zacharias' ministries said on Monday of this week, it has come to our attention that a number of false assertions regarding the character, actions, and accomplishments of Ravi Zacharias have been circulating online, blah, blah, blah. It hurts us that they're making these claims, blah, blah, blah. We will respond in greater detail to the false accusations as soon as possible, but it's Thanksgiving and a bunch of us are gone over the weekend and stuff like this. I've been looking. There's no update yet. How do you defend that sort of thing. What are you going to say?
I can't think of the last time I saw you get this fired up about a story. You're so mad at
It's
him.
such a stupid thing to lie about.
It's 100% an unforced error. I'm just like, God, you're like vibrating over there.
It's like, don't lie about your academic. I hate the resume liars and the academic liars. Like, again, you don't even need to. He would have been, listened to his lectures. Mm-hmm. They're not good in terms of convincing atheists because he makes the same fallacies as everyone else.
A compelling listen.
But he's a good speaker. Sure. I can get why he's popular. You don't need to lie. You could be like, I'm just Ravi, a guy off the streets who talks about this stuff. I just read books and I know about this stuff. Like Dan Carlin from Hardcore History. I love his podcast. He's not an academic. He says that repeatedly. Yeah. But he's someone who digs into this for himself and he puts it out there. This is what I think, but I'm not the expert here. I appreciate that. He could have done that, Ravi Zacharias. He didn't. And now his ministry's like, these are all lies and we're going to respond. What are you going to say?
Yeah, and it's interesting
because... You
don't
have a response to this.
Well, and like, it's not like he's talking about something that you necessarily need and like a doctorate in to be taken serious. He's not talking about like theoretical physics.
Yeah, right.
Where like, okay, like just guy off the street, whatever. Like, I don't care what you have to say about string theory. That's the only thing I know about theoretical physics. But with something like this, like, and that's sort of what I always thought people liked about religion is like anybody can kind of grab onto any kind of tentacle of truth they can find. Hi, come on, Ravi.
I'm not saying Christians are the only
doctorates.
People. We should. Why
I
not?
I should declare myself the leader, chairman of the Atheist division of Ball State University.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Do you know
guys.
where I went to college? It doesn't matter anymore because what does that have to do with anything?
Where did you go to college?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, if you know me from this podcast, then all you really need to know my credentials is I write about this stuff for like the past decade.
All you need to know about mine are I have none.
That's the thing. Like, why would I have to? What would it? If I said, "Oh, I have a PhD from the University of Chicago or something," what would that change? Nothing. You judge me based on what I say and what I write. I hope, and that's what you should base your opinion on. Not on, oh, well, he has a credential, therefore I should believe everything he says.
That's actually really interesting. Like, do you think that in general people would be taken more seriously if you and I, instead of just being like two idiots with microphones, one idiot and you with microphones.
If we said we're doctors of this stuff,
whether or not we
PhDs.
said, or if we said, like, if I said, oh, I'm a PhD in world religion or something like that, do you think that like
if this podcast were like two doctorates talking about atheism or something.
There'd be less swearing.
I think there are people who would be like, well, I should take this podcast more seriously or something.
Right.
But again, that's why they're doing it. That's why these people are lying about their doctorates.
To bolster themselves.
Or lying about, I graduated from a college. And by the way, this happened in the atheist world a few years ago with someone too.
Oh.
Like, it doesn't matter at this point. Like, I don't want to draw that attention there, but it's like, okay, they lied about the fact that they graduated from a certain school, but they didn't finish.
Oh, okay.
Or they said, I went to this school and they never did. It's like, who are you trying to impress? Like, you could have done.
It's an insecurity thing, isn't it? It's
yeah. It's like, I
100%.
feel like I have to say this to get thing
to be taken seriously.
I think now more than ever, it's like, show me what you've done.
Yeah.
And I'll look at your resume or whatever, or I'll look at what you're writing.
Right.
Who cares where you went to school? I have so many people I read. They're writers, they're bloggers, they're journalists. I don't care where they went to school. I like their work because I'm reading it and I can judge for myself if it's good work or not.
Well, and that really is kind of the great leveling ground of sort of the internet and blogs and podcasts and things like that. Of like, you don't have to take a word Heaven or I say seriously, but if you have listened to the body of our work and you either tend to agree or tend to disagree or whatever with what we say, then it follows that we can be a trusted place of opinion.
Yes,
but
for
we're
the blog,
never saying that anybody is like that. Anybody should like take our word as gospel. God
no,
forbid.
exactly. And this is the thing I at least try to do on the website, which is that if I'm giving you my opinion on something, or if I'm telling you a story, I would hate it if you said you're lying or you're making something up. I try to link to everything I'm saying because that's how you should do it.
And if you're editorializing or making an opinion, like you're very clear about
this is my opinion on this sort of thing. So the fact that Ravi Zacharias is clearly lying about his resume to the point where the Internet Archive has all those previous bios saved because Steve Bauman actually has a really good video.
For him?
No, I'm just angry with him.
Hurts for him.
Steve Bauman has a really nice video where he documented all this stuff from beginning to end. So if you don't like to read this stuff, his video is really, really well done and just kind of shows you all these lies. So I'm waiting for his ministry to respond. I haven't heard it yet. I got one more story for you. It shouldn't take too long, but it is... there is a guy who also writes on Patheos with me. His name is Johnny Scaramanga. He legitimately has a PhD. But one of the things he's done...
I'll check out his paper trail.
Yeah. He grew up in
I don't trust anyone no more.
He grew up in like a fundamentalist Christian household that used a curriculum called the Accelerated Christian Education. Accelerated Christian Education. It's like homeschoolers in the fundamentalist Christian world really use these textbooks to teach kids every class. I mean, they are well known in that world. And here's the problem that's going on in the UK, which is where Johnny is based. The problem is, okay, in the US, if you're applying for college, you have to take, the ACT or the SAT, a standardized test for all its pros and cons. You take the standardized test to say, this is what I know compared to everybody else. In the UK, they also have something similar. I'm sorry if I've screwed up the details here, but they're called the General Certificates of Secondary Education. You take them kind of at the end of your secondary schooling to show this is what I know in math and English
from the Harry Potter, it's the owls.
Yeah, like the owls in Harry Potter. And so here's the problem. And the
I know
newts.
a lot
Nicely
about
done.
British
You know how
schooling.
British education works.
Prefects are a thing. And Quidditch.
The problem is that private Christian schools in the UK are like, we don't want to take those standardized tests because they work off of the assumption that, like, science education, for example, they assume evolution is true.
Sure.
So we don't want to take those tests because they don't make us look
Take
good.
your facts and shove them up your ass.
Yes. So they're like, we have our alternative standardized test that gives you a sense of how well our kids do in college, because they're not all going to go to private Christian colleges. They're going to go to regular schools. So Johnny looked into these exams, and he's like, how well do they show how good Christian students who go through that schooling, are they really prepared for higher education? And do these tests reflect that? And here's what Johnny basically found, because he's trying to be objective about this. So what he said is he looked at the types of questions that they asked students, not the content. We know they're preaching creationism and stuff like that. That's besides the point.
Okay.
He's looking at the questions and how they're worded, because there are some released exams for these tests. And here's the difference. And by the way, as a teacher, former teacher, one of the things we always talk about is kind of like, what type of questions do you ask students on tests? There's the low-level type of questions, which is, can you regurgitate information?
Yeah.
Do you know when the Civil War happened?
Right. No.
That's a straightforward answer. You know what I mean? Yeah. What years was the Civil War? A better question is, what were the causes of the Civil War? An even better question is, how are the
repercussions of the war reflected today?
Yeah. That
was
requires some real knowledge and synthesizing a lot of information. That's where you want to get the kids to.
Yeah.
And by the way, we did this in math class too. Like, can you answer a straight up algebra question? That's a low level question.
Can you
apply it in a word problem? That's a harder question. And here's a situation you've never seen before, but if you knew your stuff, you could answer it.
Yeah.
Can you do that sort of problem? That's where you want to get the kids to.
Yeah, that's definitely, like, we saw that a lot in high school English class, right? Like, what was the name of this character? Why did the character do this? What do you think was the situation that set up for this character to be here? Like 1, 2, 3, third level questions.
Right. And so when Johnny looks at these Christian exams, what he finds is that a lot of their questions, the overwhelming number of these questions, ask kids, list the following. Or there's a lot of memorizing. Like, can you just regurgitate information? And not, can you explain or can you paraphrase?
Which is a really
analysis question.
Yeah, that's definitely a very old-fashioned way to teach kids by rote. Because it used to be a lot of, like, C-spot, run. That was how they used to teach, by just repetition, and that's how we've gotten to where we are now.
And by the way, the whole Common Core controversy, if you know nothing else about it, Common Core was a push to say we need to get students to that higher level type of thinking. So let's encourage them to do things that really strive toward that level and focus less on straight up knowledge, which they can now pretty much get on Google.
Yeah.
Like, if I need to know the dates of the Civil War, go find it. I'm more interested in what you're doing with that information.
I feel like growing up for me, the shift toward away from like learning to read by rote was like hooked on phonics. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Like we had to write, like we had to work on sounds, and they had to spell something, and we had to figure out why and see patterns instead of just saying like bear is B-E-A-R, Ben is B-E-N, like has been is B-E-E-N. Like instead of just saying like these are the things you have to memorize, you have to understand why they are the way they are. Like why does C-H make this sound, but
right.
C-E means this sound, and like that is understanding and I think we've talked about that a lot in terms of the Common Core math, which was so controversial, of instead of memorizing times tables, which
is stupid, but you kind of have to in order to make sense of stuff later on.
Well, there's basic things that you need to know. Like
stuff.
you need to know off the top of your head that like 2 times 5 is 10. Like you just kind of need to, but you also need to know why.
Right. And a lot of the Common Core stuff in math, which I have tried to push back on so many times when people criticize it online somewhere, is that people think showing kids different ways of understanding why 2 times 5 is 10.
Yeah.
They get angry when teachers focus on that. Like, why do you spend, I saw this video literally, like, I'm making this up, like 9 times 3 is 27. And a teacher took like a minute to explain why that was the case. And this parent was mad. It's like, look at this waste of time. It's just a 1-second question. It's like, no, she's trying to help them understand. Yeah, Jessica's doing the finger thing where you put down your third finger, therefore it's 27.
Yeah.
Like, that's nice. It doesn't teach you anything, but it's a nice way of getting the answer. And so this was a conversation
but it doesn't allow you to extrapolate out.
Right. You don't learn anything from that, and you can't use that information for harder problems. So part of what we were doing in math classes as a department was how do we encourage them to think at a higher level. But going back to what Johnny found with the Christian curriculum, if you look at even their advanced certificates, only like 3% of the questions involved evaluation.
Ooh.
And 2% synthesis and 3% analysis. I'm sorry, 3% evaluation, 2% synthesis, 5% analysis.
Yikes.
But 42% just straight up knowledge of stuff, regurgitation, right? And 40% just comprehension. Did you get that thing from this sentence?
Yeah.
Low-level, boring questions. And college, in theory, is all about critical thinking. And can you be challenged?
Yeah.
And can you think about applying these things in new ways?
It's abstract thinking.
And this is what Johnny was saying. They are not being properly prepared. And we don't know how good they're going to be in college because these tests certainly don't show you that they know anything. There are, by the way, kids who have gone through these programs who have done very well in college. And Johnny said if you talk to them, they will say, it is in spite of my education, not because of it.
Rather than the rule.
And so I just thought that was an interesting way of analyzing it. Let's look at their standardized exams compared to secular standardized exams.
And this is, you said, in the UK?
Yeah, in the UK specifically. And he said, look, the way they are asking these questions gets you to think the lowest level type of information ever. Not just that it's wrong, because they are wrong about the science stuff, but like they're not even asking kids if they know stuff really.
And the thing is, it's a disservice is the problem.
Yeah,
it's not
failing the
for
kids.
anyone.
Yeah, the teachers and the curriculum are just hurting the children.
What do you think about, like, I remember when I was in high school.
And let me add one thing, which is that I know standardized tests themselves have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So
things like, God, when I was in high school, AP U.S. History, which I don't think I was in, they had to memorize all of the presidents.
Yeah,
like,
which is dumb.
Yeah, like,
there's some things you should know, like, Lincoln wasn't in power during the Civil War era. There are some presidents and what they did you should know, but just saying, like, the order or something
is not
doesn't help you very much because you could look that up. This is the thing about math too. We always had a question of like, should we let kids use calculators on an exam? And the thing you kind of get to is like, I'm fine with them using a calculator because I better be asking them a lot of questions that the calculator's not going to help them with. And if my questions are done well, the only way the calculator is going to be helpful
if they know how to use
is if they know how to use it. Yes. And so that's the type of question you want to ask them.
Like being able to write down their work. Like, if they can't do it all in their head, then what's the point of math?
Yeah, I mean, I remember asking a question on one exam for like a geometry test. If I tell you one angle of an isosceles triangle is this, what can you tell me about another angle? But like, write out your answer. Tell me how you know it's true.
Yeah.
Or like the sine of something. Someone says the sine of this angle is, I don't know, like 1.2 or something.
Sure.
Does that answer make any sense? And if it doesn't, tell me why it doesn't make any sense. Like, explain your thinking.
Yeah.
That is what we wanted to do a lot. A lot of teachers are doing that too. But it doesn't look like these Christian curriculums are preparing students to do that, whether or not they can or so.
Or actually, now that I think about when I was in junior high, I think it was, we used to do brain teasers every day. Because it was the same way of like critical thinking of like taking all the information you have and pulling out what you need.
Can you think in a different way?
Yeah.
Can you use the stuff?
There was one that I was the only one in the class who got right.
Nicely done.
Not that I'm still celebrating something 20 years later. God,
no,
pathetic.
those good old days. Hey,
I've done other good things, I think.
Sure. What's your happy story?
So my happy thing. So I said earlier I was sick all week. My husband's been sick since Friday. I got sick on Sunday, and we both stayed home sick on Tuesday. So it's been kind of a crappy week. But this Wednesday, November 29th, was our 8-year anniversary together.
Hey, congrats.
So tonight we're going to go out and see Justice League and have dinner. Justice League, Hammett, it's a superhero. A superhero is like a person with a movie is moving pictures, but then you hear words.
Interesting. I should try these out.
And then you enjoy spending time with another human.
Humans are
a human. Hammett, a human is like a person. You know, like your human children.
Never met him.
So anyway, 8 years. We started dating November 29th, 2009.
Very nice.
Which is a long time ago.
It is a long
Not
time
that
ago.
long ago, but for me it was. I was an idiot child. Now I'm an idiot adult. Go ahead, Hammett, with yours. You said you didn't have one when you sat down. I hope you thought
the Mike
one.
Flynn stuff this morning was pretty fun.
You can't do the
We have a Christmas tree.
You do have a Christmas tree. It's very sweet.
Yes. It's
cute.
Ornamented and lit up, and my 2-year-old calls them, when you turn it on and it's lit up, she's like, it's happy birthday lights. It's like, yes, it's your birthday.
Excellent.
Because every time
Didn't she just have her birthday?
Yeah, which is why she thinks all times everything is lit up. Everything is celebrating her birthday. And so the happy birthday lights come on every night now.
Very cute.
Yes.
Any plans for the weekend? It's probably the last nice weekend of the year.
My speech kids are competing in a tournament that we're hosting,
Oh,
so
that's right.
that's all I'm doing for the next 24 hours at least.
Neat.
Just running that.
Cool.
Yeah. There's one event that involves political questions.
Oh, God.
And the funnest part is like I had everything ready to go, and then all these news pops up. It's like, well, I need to change the entire packet of stuff we were going to give kids. So
that's excellent.
good times.
How can people find you on the internet?
Hey, I'm at Hammett Meta on Twitter. Please go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast. If you like what you hear, you're welcome if my voice is not the voice of God this week.
Or maybe it is, and
Maybe
they just
it
have
is.
to deal with their free podcast.
Sorry.
I'm at Blueberry, BLUEBURIE on Twitter. My Etsy shop is Bitches Get Stitched Done, but like, go there, I guess, if you want. I'm really in the weeds with orders right now. So like, I do want to make things for you, but if you need them in time for Christmas, I'm not panicked yet.
She'll do it. Just order stuff.
I could use the money. Please order things. Patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast.
You know it.
Is that it?
Sure. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.